So remote viewing, what I'm talking about is really projecting your subconscious, projecting your subconscious to a target. And usually you're not told what the target is. And you're trained to follow a type of protocol, a method. And we usually sit down with pen and paper and we use all of our senses. So our body becomes a type of antenna. We engage our body or our senses and we start describing what we perceive. And that's kind of like the quickest way to describe what it is. But we gather information, and a lot of times this information doesn't really make sense because it comes in bits and pieces. And the reason it comes in bits and pieces is because we're tapping into the subconscious mind. And the subconscious doesn't really understand language. It understands symbols and emotions and things like that. And then we have to deal with our left brain, which wants everything to kind of make sense. It kind of follows patterns and it draws conclusions and makes a lot of assumptions with things. And so we have to figure out how to balance the left brain and the right brain in order to be consistent with accurate information.
Broaderlands Podcast.
The opinions expressed on Broaderlands Podcast are those of the guest speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of the host or Broaderlands Podcast.
I really appreciate you coming on.
Well, thank you for being here. I mean, thank you for me being here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. No, thank you. And thank you for helping me out a lot. You introduced me to a lot of great people, so I really appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem.
I tend to screw things up, so I'll let you introduce yourself and kind of share a little bit about what you do, if you don't mind.
I'm obsessed about remote viewing. I'm a hypnotherapist, and I own a publicist company. So I help authors and podcasters like yourself with their social media marketing, and also get amazing guests on their shows and things like that.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming on. And but maybe we'll get started with your upbringing. Were you always this way? Were you always did you come into the world just really fascinated about the mysteries of life and the afterlife and the unseen?
Actually, no, not at all. That kind of, I think my awareness of things, high strangeness and things like that came later in life. I didn't realize that when I was bringing up my kids, that I was talking a lot about these things, but I wasn't really conscious that I was saying what I was saying, meaning that when I would give them advice or how I would raise them or our morals and ethics and all those things really came from this idea of consciousness. And, I always had wonders about, about where we come from and things like that. But in terms of psychic and being any of those kinds of superpowers, I just really thought I was just like everybody else, and something that what I learned now in time is that these things are part of everybody. I don't think people are not born with it. I think that everybody's intuitive, and it's really more about the semantics, the words that we use. There's like a lot of people out there that get turned off by the word psychic, but if we use a word intuitive or I just follow my gut, those words kind of resonate with other people, but we're really talking about the same thing. We're talking about something that's intangible about ourselves and comes from something else that we really haven't been able to identify yet.
Even when you said that right now, there's still a part of me saying that's not possible. I'm not psychic. I'm not this. I'm not that. I feel like we've been, as human beings on this planet, we kind of been dummied down a little bit.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say dummied down, but I think like I like to imagine it as that part of ourselves that are sleeping, that we just, we like right now, I know indigenous people, they can just, smell or get in touch with the natural elements and know that there's going to be a storm. We pick up our cell phones and get on the weather app and find out what the weather is going to be. So, there's no reason for us to depend on our intuitive nature. So it's almost like, it's kind of ironic that we're telling people that we can train you to use that, because this is part of being human. It's part of what we've been using since we were primitive people. We had to use intuition as hunters and gatherers. That's, how we were able to kind of figure out how to strategize hunting animals and things like that. So it is a natural part of us that we just aren't always using.
Yeah, thank you. Did you have some kind of spiritual awakening or something one day? Just have some profound shift in consciousness that really got you inspired to get into this field?
No, for me, there was not any kind of moment or anything. It was just a gradual thing where information just kind of hit, things that you're aware of, but you haven't really absorbed. So I think that with a lot of people, we dismiss a lot of things that happen in our lives. And we're, oh, that's just this, or that's just that, things like that. But I think it came a point where I started to really pay attention to things. And my big superpower, one of my big superpowers is manifesting. And I truly believe in manifesting because I think once you put that out into the universe, and then you just expect that to happen, and it always does. But a lot of times, a lot of people will put something out into the universe and they're getting tons of messages, tons of responses to their manifestation, but they dismiss it. And they're like, oh, that's just this, or oh, that's a coincidence, or oh, and they dismiss it. But I think that once we start paying attention to all these things coming at us, we're going to start putting things together. And that's kind of what happened for me, is I just started to put things together, like, I guess you could say, like connecting the dots. And then you get to a point where you can't explain things away anymore. It's just like, fine, I have to accept it because it is what it is. And so that's how it happened for me. So, and in remote viewing, it's a lot of practice, so it's not something, the kind of remote viewing that I work on, which is controlled remote viewing, which kind of the controlled remote viewing prompted from the military. And so there's like a set protocol for it. We use a type of scientific kind of methodology for it, and then we're helping detectives find missing people and answer any kind of question you have about anything in the world.
Yeah, thank you. For those who may not know about remote viewing, maybe you can explain what remote viewing is, because I know some of my audience may not know what remote viewing is.
So remote viewing, what I'm talking about is really projecting your subconscious projecting your subconscious to a target. And usually you're not told what the target is. And you're trained to follow a type of protocol, a method. And we usually sit down with pen and paper and we use all of our senses. So our body becomes a type of antenna. We engage our body or our senses and we start describing what we perceive. And that's kind of like the quickest way to describe what it is. But we gather information, and a lot of times this information doesn't really make sense because it comes in bits and pieces. And the reason it comes in bits and pieces is because we're tapping into the subconscious mind. And the subconscious doesn't really understand language. It understands symbols and emotions and things like that. And then we have to deal with our left brain, which wants everything to kind of make sense. It kind of follows patterns and it draws conclusions and makes a lot of assumptions with things. And so we have to figure out how to balance the left brain and the right brain in order to be consistent with accurate information. So that's what our challenge is. And I feel, I work with in the hypnosis world as a hypnotherapist. I work with psychics and mediums and all sorts of people. And I do find that we do get sucked into that left brain thing where we are drawing conclusions and making assumptions. And that really pulls us off the track of accurate information. So in remote viewing, we are working very hard to figure out how to be more accurate and kind of fight our human nature, which is we do need that left brain. So we're kind of fighting what is natural to us. And that's why we always say it's like a martial art, because you really have to practice.
Yeah, thank you. Speaking of martial arts, is there different types of remote viewing like martial arts? Because you brought up controlled remote viewing. Is there different types of styles?
Yeah, there's a lot of different kinds of remote viewing. Controlled remote viewing, I use that because it's not a free form. Like free form would be when somebody who is doing a psychic reading and they imagine they're at a location. Someone will say, "Oh, guess where I am," or something like that, and then they just kind of tune in and imagine the location, and then you can get some hits on that too. In the remote viewing I'm talking about, it really is, it follows a structure where you're writing, you're perceiving, you follow a certain set of procedures. And within the controlled remote viewing community, there's a lot of different ways to do that too. So there's several guys that retired from the military that when they were done started teaching regular people how to remote viewing. So each one of these people kind of came up with their own process. So they're all under the umbrella of controlled remote viewing, but each one has a little bit of a different method or teaching or something like that. And the one that I teach is called transdimensional systems, which after the military declassified the Stargate, Project Stargate, that started in the 70s, they declassified it in the 90s. And there was a group of people that came up with this TDS, transdimensional systems, which is more civilian, more attractive to civilians. So you don't have all the terminology of the military, and it's a little bit more, I guess, more getting your butts out of the seats and really integrating yourself with the target. And so we think that this method really helps. It's kind of the next step, the future of remote viewing.
Yeah, thank you. So the military's been doing this for a very long time, right?
Yeah, they were doing this in the 70s. You could on Wikipedia, I think they talk about Project Stargate. There's a film called Third Eye Spies with that focuses on Russell Targ, which is one of the um, physicists that put the whole protocol together. And it talks about his history and how these things got started and the whole story, which is pretty interesting. And I feel like, our group, the group I work with, is kind of moving this forward into the future. We're doing a lot of experiments and research, and some of our papers have been published, and we really want to move into the mainstream world. So we have to do things the way mainstream people expect things to be seen. So we work
Mm.
really hard at making sure that we're crossing the T's and dotting the I's, and so that we can get their attention to say, hey, wait, what's going on here? So
Mm.
that's kind of what we're moving in towards.
Yeah, appreciate that. And before I ask you about your some of your experiences or something, I want to go back to Third Eye Spies because you talked about Russell Targ. There was Ingo Swan and Pat Price were in that documentary as well. I think I don't even remember when I knew I found out about Ingo Swan maybe about 2010. I think he passed away in 2008 or something. I'm not sure. It's been a while. But I don't even know how I found out about him, but I just thought he was fascinating. It's been a long time now. But could you touch on Third Eye Spy and what it's about? Because I think the documentary is fascinating. Most people probably never heard of it that will be watching this. So maybe you can share about who these gentlemen were, if you don't mind,
Yeah,
briefly.
basically, it really goes over the history. There was a movie called Men Who Stare at Ghosts, which was kind of a satire, funny. George Clooney was in it. And so there was a lot of that is like the funny side of things. But Third Eye Spy is more of a documentary and really talks to these people that put this moving into a part of the government. So what happened was Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff, who were working on lasers for Stanford Research Institute International, and so the government kind of asked them if they would work on this project to look into and study psychic development and what we could do it as. Can we use it within our military? Can we get intel about, secret things and POWs and things like that? And so Hal and Russell found Ingo because Ingo was at the time, one of the most studied psychics and passed a lot of the tests. And so they felt, we need the best of the best. And so the three of them got together and put together this protocol and started building a team. And they were getting a lot of really cool information. You can look online to see some of their sessions and some of their successes. But again, one of the issues is that Joe McMoneagle, who is on the team, they called him 001, and he's also one of the best remote viewers. And he said, Michelle, if you want to be a world-class remote viewer, you have to give up what it is to be human. And I was like, what does that mean? And really what he meant is what I said earlier, is basically part of being human is that left brain. It's that part that everything needs to make sense. That part that we absolutely need because that's how we survive, but finding patterns and making a determination. But if we can let that part of ourselves go and just operate from the subconscious mind, then we can be very reliable. Because the minute you add language to the symbols, you're already being subjective based on your history, your life, your environment, and things like that. So already you can start slanting things in the wrong direction. So a common example that we use is if I if I tell you that I'm perceiving something that's red, shiny, and round, my left brain is gonna, like a computer, do, a red, shiny, round apple. It's gonna automatically go to apple because that's the pattern. But what if the actual red, shiny, there's a billion things out there that can be red, shiny, and round. And if you're looking for a missing person, unless they're near an apple or a fruit basket, that's not going to be helpful. And you could be also describing a truck, a red, shiny, round truck that's near this missing person. So you would completely be going down the wrong path by describing a fruit basket, because you're going to build a story around an apple because you're holding on to, well, it must be an apple. But if you remain open and you're just operating from the subconscious and you're not trying to analyze it, then you might be describing the truck and other things that are more related to what your job is, which is to help find that missing person. So that's kind of that's our little bit of our I guess hurdle that we have to overcome.
Are there exercises to like help, put the left part of the brain on check that you do?
I created a like a little guided imagery where we use a gauge, and the gauge turns down your left brain and turns up your right brain, and we do that before we do a cool down before we do a session. So you want to be completely relaxed and clear before you start the session. But when you take the class, this is what we're learning. And so ultimately, it's about practicing. You have to keep on practicing, and then you start learning how your subconscious communicates with your left brain, and you start learning that language, and then over time you get better and better. But at this point, we haven't achieved 100% accuracy. There are a lot of people doing a lot of research. There's a type of remote viewing called ARV, associative remote viewing, and they use it for a binary question. So it's very handy when you want to wager on sporting events, or if you want to look at the stock market, because you're looking at something going up or down, over, under, right or left, blue dress, red dress, anything like that. So that comes in very handy for something like that. And because they're quick, it's really, really great for us to use that to study what's happening. And but people are doing these projects, keeping track of all the data. There are people that have gone to like a 92% hit rate, where one guy, he documented the whole thing, I think over a year, and I think he made like over $300,000. And so there's a lot of research out there that people can read and see that this is happening, and people are successful at it. So it's pretty cool.
I know you've talked about this before, and I've heard you bring it up in a talk, and people ask you, why ain't you a millionaire? Remote viewers are millionaires. Yeah.
That's why. It's because we have to be able to balance that left and right brain together, because part of it is being human, and we have to overcome that part. And I think that with people that are really questioning our consciousness and our reality, I think the more that we get more people looking at that we're more than just this, I think we're going to come up with that answer. That answer will come, because we're more than just flesh and blood, and there's just more out there. And I think we're infants right now studying this, and we can't even all get along. So, but I think that the people that are so powerful are the ones that are just keep pushing these questions. It's important to be asking lots of questions. You know, where did that come from? What is this? What is that? That's what's going to move us in that direction.
So you're saying we're not finite sinners?
No.
Just
Yeah. We are not. That's too simple.
I love that. Do you know of people using remote viewing in the wrong way?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anybody, but there is that ability, and they call it remote influencing. I don't really, I don't keep that in my wheelhouse. I don't think about it. I don't use it. But I talk about remote influencing because it can also be used for good, which is healing, and helping people in that way. So you can actually remote influence people for healing. And that's really, so it is a true thing. So there's always kind of like the dark and light of things. I just, for me, the dark part isn't any part of, I just don't think it's productive. It's not going to take us where we need to be. I think we need to be, not that life is perfect, but I don't think that there's any purpose for influencing people in a negative way. So I think, keeping it to positive and healing and helping people is a great way to be using that.
Yeah, thank you. I also heard you share about you believe that everyone should learn remote viewing. Why is that?
Because I think that it will help you really get in touch with your 2.0 self, like the Yoda self. I think that we all need to have a relationship with that part of ourselves because it's the wiser part. And, if we stay in this kind of earthbound type self, we are not, being our best selves. And I think that anytime we're doing work like this, it's a way to learn how we communicate with that high part. So a lot of times, if I am kind of in, like, I think I just had an experience the other day where I sent somebody an email and I had a rough day and I got a ton of emails, but I am very conscious of answering people quickly because I know what it feels like, where I have to wait for my answers. So for me, it's a big thing to answer people as quick as possible. So it was a crazy day with a lot of things going on. And so I answered one person. I just copied and pasted the information they needed and hit send. And the person got offended. They thought that was curt. They thought it was abrupt, and they were hurt by that because normally I'll spend some time. How you doing? I write, but I couldn't yesterday. But I still wanted to achieve my goal and get them the information they needed. And I kind of for a second I was thinking, I think I got like, how dare them? Like, they don't know my day. And, why didn't they give me the benefit of the doubt? Like, what's the big deal? Like, why are they offended? No. And then I thought, wait, ask the 2.0 Michelle, ask Yoda Michelle. And so Yoda Michelle was like, you know what? Like, that's how they did it. Like, it's about them and where they were in their life. They were feeling defensive or for whatever reason, and just have compassion. And so my email back to the person, I just simply explained that I had a really hard day. I explained what I just told you. I said, I just wanted to get you the answer, but there was a lot going on and this and that, and just a very compassionate email. I apologized, and it was just, and then afterwards they were able to understand where I was coming from. And so everything was beautiful. Like everything, ended in a good way. And I think that we don't check in with that wiser part of ourselves, and we get wrapped up into this horrible knee-jerk reaction based on these emotions without kind of rising up to, it's true. Like if I went to Yoda, would Yoda tell me to write a nasty email back? Yoda would never do that, right? So why would not Michelle 2.0 do that? Like I can be better, and it's about compassion. And, I think living your life that way, that's how we're going to do it.
I love that. I remember one time I seen my neighbor walking, and I'm driving by, I wave, and they look at me but don't wave back, and I'm like, the mind, whatever it's saying. But I realized like maybe they're going through a bad moment. Maybe they lost their job. Maybe someone passed away. Maybe I never used to question that before. It was always just an emotional reaction, like F that person, But when you start to have understanding, your heart softens, and you can just be more lovable, more kind, and less reactive. I love it. Yeah, thank you for saying that. That's a great reminder for any of us that are human beings having this human experience. So thank you.
I have, when I talk to my students, I have a little diagram that I draw for them, and it's just a line, and on the ends of both lines are the extreme emotions that we have on both sides. So one side is love, unconditional love, and the other side is fear of loss. Okay, so one side is love and the other side is loss. So and unconditional love is essentially is acceptance. Unconditional love is acceptance. And so then I put like in the middle, a little line in the middle, the people that are operating from acceptance, okay, are in this place of love. The people that are operating from fear are in this place of defensive. And so if you find yourself feeling defensive about something, it's as easy as just shifting over to love. That's it. And then you're a happier person, because when you're operating from this place of love, and I don't mean to be hippy dippy about it, but my point is that you get a choice. Once you're aware of it, you can choose, oh, you know what? I want to be defensive. Hey, I want to. Then own it. Don't be like I'm powerless. You choose it. But if you don't want to be defensive and you want to be in a place of love, which is a nicer life, then move over. That's as easy as it is. It may seem hard, but it's not hard. It's a choice. And, and the fact that we get to choose a choice is what empowers us. And then owning it. Like, there's a consequence to each choice. And usually when you choose love, it's a better consequence than if you choose defensive or fear. And so every day when anything happens, you get to choose between those two things.
I love that. Thank you. That's a great reminder too. I always say spirituality is taking responsibility for our own life, our own thoughts, our own actions, and if I don't, I'm going to speak victimese and be a victim, all the time. And so I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Going back to, I wanted to ask you something about Ingo Swan really quick, if you know anything about this. Was that a true event, a remote viewing when he went to the moon?
Yeah. So, I mean, that was, so normally, there is, when you're in that state of remote viewing and part of the training, normally our intention is to stay in our body and project our subconscious out. Sometimes people can actually pop out and kind of have we call it like aesthetic impact, or something where they actually can feel like they're at the target, and then they get more information, because like if they perceive something, we tell them, okay, reach out and touch it. What does it feel like? What's the texture of it? What's it smell like? So we're always encouraging them to get as much as possible. So those things can happen, but what's very interesting, and I don't know, is that the majority of the sessions that I give my students and work with, they don't know what the target is, which makes it even more interesting when they come back with important information. So, for example, if I tell somebody that your target is, the pyramids, then they're for sure going to get information about what they think. That's a really good way to engage your left brain, because then you're going to start making things up. But if I say something and I give them a random number and I say, here's your target, do your thing, then they start getting information that lines up with the pyramids. Which one do you think is more accurate and more interesting to be studying? So that's the one difference between a lot of the freestyle remote viewing. A lot of people out there freestyle, they know what the target is. So they have a risk of making things up, where when we are working on it, people don't know what the target is. So they can't kind of sway in one direction or the other. And so with Ingo Swan, I don't recall what his tasking was. I'm not sure, because sometimes you do get I don't think he knew he was remote viewing. So whatever information he got was because somehow he was engaged in the target. He was there, and all his job and what he trained all of us to do is just report what you perceive. That's it. So, and then you do your thing. Then afterwards, you analyze it. So it is pretty amazing the kinds of hits that he was able to get, and also the experience he was able to get.
Yeah, he was a hero of mine. Yeah, he didn't know where he was going. He got coordinates, and I guess he talked about going to the backside of the moon and seeing extraterrestrials, other beings with bases there, and they knew he was there. So I
Yeah.
thought that was
Yeah, I've heard that happening to a few people that I've worked with, where they got they didn't really get very far. They felt like they got blocked, or they had for whatever reason they had to stop their session, because they just felt like they hit a wall or something. They just couldn't get more information. So that can happen too. So it's just a lot of cool stuff. That's for
yeah,
sure.
it's mind blowing too. So if someone feels like there is a ghost or something staring at them, that could be someone remote viewing.
It could be. Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of things that for me, it's all surrounded by intention.
Hmm.
Intention will define kind of the frequency of where it's coming from. So are you familiar with Robert Monroe, the Monroe Institute?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it's been a while.
Okay, so I was, for like a year, I was working on achieving an intentional outer body experience, not a spontaneous one, but one that I was, I set up an intention, and I was also working on lucid dreaming and things like that for a whole year. And I had a partner that was also working with me. And so every day we would, I think it was like noon, and for a half hour we would go into a meditation and achieve what we were trying to do. And so the Monroe Institute has these like little satellites, like little groups in different states, just to get you to learn some of the techniques that they teach there with the binaural beats and everything. And so I went to one, and my intention was to visit my friend who we were partners with. So it was my first class, and so they were teaching us what to do, and we're laying down on mats, and my intention was to go visit him, have an OBE and go visit him. And so I did, and so I kind of ended up at his front door, and then I saw him, and he was sitting like at a table, and I started like pulling his hair, and then touching his nose and kind of doing certain things. And I'm like, I don't know, I don't know if anything's going to happen. But I was, I could be obnoxious. So I was just like nagging him, pulling his hair and tickling him and whatever. So we were done. I didn't really think much of it. I just thought it was a fun thing. And so I called him up on my way home and I said, hey, what are you doing? Because I wanted to see if I was right. He's like, oh, I was actually remote viewing a session. I said, oh, you were? I said, did you notice anything? And he goes, not really. And I said, are you sure? And he goes, well, I guess I was kind of itchy. I was itchy all over. And I said, you were? He's like, yeah. I'm like, I think I was there. I was like pulling your hair and touching your nose. And he's like, oh, and we were laughing about it. So, I don't know if it happened or not, but it seems like something happened, that he was itchy because I was like bugging him. So, so that was kind of cool to happen. And I'm sure there's like tons of stories like that where people do that. I think it's all about intention, that I put my intention into this is what I want to do. And then everything else just follows it.
I'm kind of confused with the remote viewing and outer body experience because you intentionally did that, left the body intentionally. Right. I've had one where it happened without trying. When my father passed away, I tapped into his consciousness. They call it a shared death experience.
Yes.
Where I was able to see everything. I had a couple different times where I was out of the body, but I never tried. I don't even know how I would even try.
Yeah, that would be like a spontaneous where it just happened, and and that's really cool. But if for me, I wanted to kind of control it so that I can say, oh, I want to go to the pyramids, or I want to go do this, or I want to go do that. I want to go to Mars, and it was, I thought of it more like a game. I wasn't taking it too seriously, but it was fun. It was like a game. And I just wanted to push myself, to see what can I achieve. But remote viewing, our goal is not to leave our body. Our goal is to gather intel. Our goal is to perceive and to describe what we're perceiving. And if we pop out of our body, then we do. But that isn't our main intention. Our intention is to pay attention to important details that will help whatever the tasking is, whatever we need to know. So,
That's awesome. You brought up earlier about detectives. Have you worked with detectives before? To like solve a case or anything or help?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we worked on a lot of true crimes. I had my team. So I teach my classes, and my goal is to create a team because I got emails all the time asking for help on all sorts of different projects, not just crimes or anything like that, but lots of cool things that you would never imagine people wanting to apply remote viewing to. So they're kind of cool. But one author, she was writing a book on the Murdaugh case, the Murdaugh murders in, I think, South Carolina, the lawyer that he was guilty for killing his wife and his son. And there were also these other crimes related to his family and some weird stuff. So she was writing a book, and she asked my team to remote view. So I did not tell them it was a Murdaugh case. I just told them we're working on a true crime, because true crimes are not easy to work on. You go through a lot because you're going to see a lot of nasty stuff. So I like to prepare people a little. So I'll just say a true crime case. So that they're in that mindset and they can put up protection and things like that. And so we did it, and oh boy, we got some really good. In fact, one of the viewers sketched out the exact position of one of the bodies.
Wow.
And that was, I mean, shocking. And another viewer who doesn't even live in this country, she lives in New Zealand. She heard the words, I can't remember what they are now, but they were actually the headlines of a newspaper. She just wrote them in her session way before this was even out in the public. So, because we even have it dated. So it was crazy. And then the lady who wrote the book, there's a whole chapter of our remote viewing. And so I put a compilation of all the sessions that were really cool in the book. And so there's a whole chapter on using remote viewing for that. And then we were also asked to do the Moscow and Iowa, right? Idaho, the Moscow. We were asked, the detectives called us, and then I've had a few other cases in the past that I've worked on as well.
Well, that's amazing. I heard you bring up remote viewing Bigfoot before. Is that
Yeah.
true? How was that? That's awesome.
That was weird. So it was actually a practice session. Sometimes, we just give each other in our group, just keep our skills sharp. And so they're like, hey, Michelle, I have a target for you. I'm like, okay. So I did my session and he was monitoring me. So we were on Zoom, kind of like this. And he was like, okay, and a monitor will kind of help you through it, but they can't lead you. So you have to be trained to be a monitor so that you don't by accident lead people. So, and he was really good at it. So the first thing I got was, I perceived a very humongous female. And I was, in my mind, my left brain, which is not good, was fighting because I'm like, this can't be a female if it's so big. Women are not big. Not like this. This is a huge female, like a basketball player or something. I don't know. But my mind was like, no, don't switch it. Just stick with the female. And I just did. I stuck with the female. And then he's like, okay, blend with the subject. I'm like, blend. And I'm like, he's like, touch your body. And I'm like, touching. And I'm like, whoa, my arm feels like it's going way past my arm. And it feels really hairy. And so I was getting really, and at some point, I started to suspect that I was remote viewing Bigfoot. I mean, because all the things were kind of coming. I'm like, is this Bigfoot? And he's like, I'm not saying, just keep going. And so the whole thing. So it turned out I was remote viewing the Patterson-Gimlin footage. So the secret question that he didn't tell me was, is it a hoax or is it real? And so I was remote viewing and to me, I'm like, it had to be real because I was getting a female, and there's a lot of people that believe that that was a female. And the fact that I was so stubborn, I would not change my mind. Mm-hmm. So I really think it's real. I mean, I do. And I'm actually a producer on the Bigfoot film. That's how much I believe in it. It's called Flash of Beauty, Paranormal Bigfoot. So you could get it on Amazon Prime. And it goes into the kind of the physics of the possibility that Bigfoot is more than flesh and blood, that it's possible they could be interdimensional beings. And that can answer a lot of things. And Dr. Simeon Hein has an amazing, the way he describes how it's possible that there are already species on our planet that do things like cloak and things like that, that it's not a huge and far stretch that there could be a Bigfoot doing the same thing. So it's fascinating. And then they also have footage of a Bigfoot, which we think was cloaking. And so we got that on film. So yeah, if that's not a good teaser, I don't know what is.
I'm going to watch that for sure.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, to see that. So
So, do you believe in reincarnation? Because I know
I
you.
do. I do. In hypnosis, I use a lot of past life regression to help people in a therapeutic way, but also just for fun. People just want to kind of pop into lives. And, one of my targets that I do in my class is to go to a past life that will help you be a better remote viewer, bring back a
Mm.
skill that will help you be a better remote viewer. So can you imagine what those sessions look like? Those are cool. So
So, what's the purpose of reincarnation? I mean, is it to learn, continue to expand?
yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, I guess the way I kind of have a little imagery of what I think it is, that we're all souls with like big kind of holes in our bodies. And each life we jump into, we have a mission, and our mission is to experience life in infinite ways. So maybe I have to live, my soul needs to live a life, with a missing limb, or maybe a poor person or a rich person or whatever, anything. And each time you complete a mission kind of fills up a hole. And then once you become complete, then you return to the source. That's kind of my quick and dirty theory, what I tell my kids. So, yeah.
Well, it makes more sense to me than you just live one life, and if you're good or bad, you're gonna go here, you're gonna go there. It just doesn't make sense that old belief system.
There's just too much, like, that's too simple. Sometimes I just think that we're a lot more faceted and a lot more complicated than just some binary answer, good, bad. There's gray, and I don't mean alien gray, but there is gray in the world. So, I mean, I just think it's a spectrum of answers about what we're doing here.
Yeah,
So,
you're right. And there's children that come in remembering their past lives. I remember when I was a kid, I had a little bit of remembrance of, like, I knew I lived here and I knew I lived there. I remember back in the day when they have those kung fu movies on the weekends on regular TV, and they would translate them into English. But
yeah,
like, I knew I lived in that environment as a little kid. Like, there was this inner knowing. Same thing with like
yeah,
India, or like I even knew I lived like in a time where like Star Wars. If that makes
yeah.
sense. Like, I had this inner knowing, but I had a little bit of remembrance. So I believe
Yeah,
in all that because that's been my experience.
yeah, like something feels familiar.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Me, I've always been drawn to medieval times, and it's not like I like it, but it's kind of like I know details of things that I had to go look up to see if they were even true. And
Mm.
they're just weird things, and things that aren't very popular that people know and I just know. So it's yeah. I think if you're drawn to something, just like I said, like question, just question and open your mind, and yeah, I think it's pretty cool.
I remember being a kid, and there's that one little white kid with all the black kids, and people would say, "Oh, that kid thinks he's white. I mean, black." The white kids will say, "Oh, that kid thinks he's black," or that black kid with all the white kids, he thinks he's white, or a Mexican kid with all you know. But I think maybe we have some kind of remembrance of a past life when we're still attached to our spacesuit and culture from another life.
Yeah, I mean that's true. Yeah, I agree. I think yeah, I think it leaks out. I mean, uh there's so many stories you hear with people that do have, where they actually feel like they were somebody from the past, where they have I think there was a little kid that was Lou Gehrig. I think he believed, he had these memories, and experiences like he was like 2 and 3. And then there was another lady who, it was an incredible story that she was Anne Frank. And she has her life paralleled Anne Frank. And at a very young age, she was saying to her parents, you're not my parent. Where is my mom? Where is my mom? When she was very little, she didn't understand what was going on. So those are fascinating to me, especially when they're so little and they're showing this behavior. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. That made me feel yucky right now. Just even saying, like, thinking about like how we separate ourselves when we're all really one. You know, we fall into that conscious separation.
Yeah, yeah. It feels like a challenge that we have to overcome. You know, I think remembering that, like every time you speak bad about anybody in the world, you're creating like, you know, like if it were a materialistic thing, it would be like creating a dark energy. You know, every time you speak bad, you're creating these, you know, electrons and whatever of negative. And so it affects everybody because we breathe it in, we live in it, and that's how we're. So it's important to, you know, be very careful and mindful of the words we use and how we speak about people, and again, just like that little line that I told you, being in this place of acceptance and just accepting everyone. I mean, I think if everyone was the same, it would be so boring anyway. I mean, I really accept the differences in everybody. It's the coolest and most interesting things. I don't want everyone to be like me, and I don't want to be like everybody. So, so it's just, you know, that's a very good place to be.
Yeah, appreciate that. How has remote viewing changed your worldview? From like, has that brought you more like? Has it made you more loving, more feeling more connected with life in general by remote viewing?
Yeah, I think more accepting. You know, I think a lot of the skills that we learn in remote viewing, I apply to my regular life, and I just feel like, you know, that 2.0, learning how to work with my consciousness, my higher self, I think is probably what has influenced me the most, just being a better person and reaching the potential. You know, it's like on the way to reaching your potential is just as good as getting there. Like, I don't know if we will ever get there, but if we're working towards getting there, it's just as good. So, and it would be cool to have lots of people working on it too. And it would just raise everything, and we can really kind of stop focusing on petty things in the world and start focusing on these amazing, you know, things, even in technology and consciousness, anything. You know, it's just we're in such a low vibration right now that, you know, we're not accomplishing anything. We're just kind of going in circles just in life. So
I ask
yeah.
you that because you know, meeting you in person and having a talk with you, and just your willingness to be helpful and serviceful and you know, mindful, and I just I hear a very humble and loving person in you. You know, and I know we all have our other parts in us that we get angry at times and get stressed out, but I really feel you're very genuine. So I really appreciate that, and thank you for everything you've done for me.
Oh my gosh, thank you. And thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. Um and yeah, I think this is how we move forward and get through this thing together, right?
Yeah, you're right. Really quick, your classes and how do we find you? And maybe you could share a little bit about your classes. I know you have one coming up soon for remote viewing.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a remote viewing. It's a 6-week course on Saturday morning. So 6 consecutive Saturdays, 2 hours of class, and we're learning the protocol for remote viewing. And I have it so far scheduled for starting this Saturday, but I haven't had anybody really sign up for it yet. I haven't been working hard on getting it filled up just because I have a lot of other things going on, but I am always excited to teach the class. So if I can get students, I would love to start a class. It's on butterflyeffectcenter.com. So it's butterfly, like BUTTERFLY, effect, EFFECT, center, CENTER.com, butterflyeffectcenter.com. And that has all the information about my classes, the prices, and also my hypnosis stuff too. So it's all there.
Yeah, thank you for coming on, and I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you.